The chamber was already restless, but the moment Jasmine Crockett rose to speak, the air shifted. Cameras zoomed in, microphones tilted toward her, every head turning. She didn't waste a second. Her voice cut through the silence like a blade. "Justice Clarence Thomas," she began, her tone sharp and deliberate, "has turned the Supreme Court into a marketplace." Gasps scattered across the room. Across the aisle, a senator muttered, "Outrageous," but Crockett's eyes never wavered. She slammed a folder onto the desk in front of her. "These are not rumors. These are receipts." The chamber erupted into a low roar. Some lawmakers leaned forward, eager. Others shook their heads violently. Crockett pressed on. "You think the American people don't see it? You think they can't tell the difference between service and servitude?" Her voice rose. "Thomas has pocketed the favors of billionaires while ruling on their cases. This is not impartial justice. This is pay to play." For a moment, silence. Then the eruption came. Half the chamber shouting in defense, the other half hammering the table in approval. Crockett lifted a single sheet high, the paper trembling under the weight of the spotlight. "This isn't speculation. This is a private flight manifest listing Clarence Thomas as a guest, paid in full by a billionaire, justice, bought and sold." The atmosphere was electric. Murmurs turned into shouts. One lawmaker yelled, "Prove it!" Another shouted, "This is slander!" Crockett leaned into the microphone, her words slow, deliberate, dripping with defiance. "You want proof? You'll get it page by page, line by line, and every American watching will know exactly how far this corruption goes." The tension was unbearable. Reporters scribbled furiously. Camera flashes punctuated the chamber like lightning strikes. Crockett lowered her paper, staring across the aisle, her voice dropping just enough to draw everyone in. "You cannot silence this. Not today. Not ever." The block ended with the chamber split in chaos, applause crashing against furious shouting. The confrontation was just beginning. The chamber was still reverberating from the clash, but Crockett did not retreat. She reached for the thick folder beside her and pulled out a set of glossy pages. The shuffle of paper echoed through the microphones, and the cameras zoomed tighter, catching every twitch of her expression. "These are not whispers in dark corners," she declared. "These are documents, signed, stamped, undeniable." She held one page high, tilting it so the press pool could capture the headline at the top, "A Private Jet Itinerary." Gasps broke again. Crockett stabbed her finger at the sheet. "Clarence Thomas, flown to a billionaire's retreat in Montana. The cost of the jet alone could fund a small-town school for a year, and yet he paid nothing." The uproar spread like fire. Across the aisle, a Republican lawmaker leapt to his feet. "This is a political witch hunt!" Crockett's reply was merciless. "If uncovering corruption is a witch hunt, then consider me the witch you fear most." The crowd reacted instantly. Some slammed fists on their desks in approval. Others shouted over each other, but Crockett refused to yield. She pulled another document, a photo printed from social media. Clarence Thomas on the deck of a sprawling billionaire's yacht, sunglasses perched on his face, a glass of champagne at his side. She held the photo high. Is this friendship or is this bribery? Because the line between the two disappears when rulings worth billions sit on the table. The room froze for a moment, until one senator shouted, "This is outrageous fabrication!" Crockett slammed the photo back down. Fabrication? Then why are the billionaires themselves bragging about their generosity? They post their luxury on the internet, yet Thomas sits on the highest court pretending it never happened. Reporters whispered furiously. News outlets already crafting headlines in real time. A journalist muttered into his phone, "Crockett brandishes yacht photo of Thomas. Allegations of billionaire gifts." Crockett wasn't finished. She drew the chamber deeper into the evidence. Here's a financial disclosure, blank. Conveniently missing the flights, conveniently missing the gifts, conveniently missing the truth. The tension snapped when she delivered the line that would echo across the nation. Her voice thundered, raw and cutting. "This is not friendship. This is bribery." The words detonated in the chamber. Half the audience erupted in applause. The other half shouted accusations of slander. The speaker tried to restore order, banging the gavel, but the damage was done. Every microphone had caught the phrase. Every camera had clipped the moment. and within seconds the video would flood social media. An unfiltered confrontation, a soundbite impossible to spin. Crockett, chest heaving, let the silence after her words hang in the air. She didn't need to say more. The evidence spoke louder than any closing argument. The echo of Crockett's words still hung in the chamber when the counterattack erupted. A senior Republican senator shot to his feet, his voice cracking with rage. "This is a circus! This is a smear campaign against a man who has dedicated his life to the Constitution!" His fists pounded the desk, his face flushed red, veins bulging at his temple. Crockett didn't even flinch. She slid another page from her folder, holding it between two fingers. Dedicated to the Constitution? Or dedicated to the wallets of billionaires? The roar intensified. Several lawmakers stood, shouting over one another. "Sit down! Withdraw that statement! This is beneath the dignity of the House!" But Crockett leaned forward into the microphone, her voice cutting clean through the chaos. "If you call facts theater, then your stage is corruption." That line hit like a thunderclap. Applause and boos collided in the chamber, the noise so loud the speaker's gavel struck 3, 4, 5 times without effect. Cameras zoomed tighter. Reporters' pens scratched like frantic percussion. A younger conservative lawmaker pointed across the aisle, trembling with indignation. "You're accusing a Supreme Court justice of crimes without evidence! This is slander!" Crockett rose higher in her stance, her hand slicing the air like a blade. "I am not accusing without evidence. I am reading the evidence to you right now. The crime is not my words. The crime is on those flight logs, those yachts, those luxury retreats." The chamber broke into chaos again. Some lawmakers tried to drown her out by chanting, "Shame, shame!" Others, mostly Democrats, clapped furiously, rising to their feet in solidarity. The clash became a war of volume. Then came Clarence Thomas's staunchest defender in the Senate, a seasoned figure with a booming voice and a reputation for intimidation. He sneered into his microphone, speaking with deliberate venom. "This hearing is nothing but an attempt to dismantle faith in our institutions. And I will not sit here while a radical from Texas lectures us on integrity." Gasps. The insult was sharp, meant to sting, but Crockett's smile was sharper. She stepped forward, unshaken. "A radical? If demanding honesty from the highest court in the land is radical, then I'll wear the badge proudly. Better a radical for truth than a servant to billionaires." The line sliced through the noise. Cheers erupted from her side. Even some independents nodded, murmuring agreement. The senior Republican doubled down, slamming his hand again. "Withdraw! Withdraw those words!" Crockett refused. Her voice hardened, iron in every syllable. "You can demand silence. But the American people deserve the truth, and I will not withdraw one word." The speaker tried to intervene again, his gavel striking until the wood splintered slightly. "Order! This chamber will come to order!" But the scene had already transcended order. Phones buzzed in the press section, producers demanding live clips, anchors waiting to go on air with breaking coverage. The confrontation was viral before it even ended. Crockett turned to the cameras deliberately, her face composed, her voice calm but piercing. "The corruption is real. The question is, who here has the courage to admit it, and who will keep pretending the emperor wears clothes?" The chamber exploded again. Her words were already out in the world, unstoppable. The hearing adjourned for the evening, but the war had only just begun. As the chamber emptied, Crockett gathered her folders into a neat stack, her hands steady despite the storm around her. She could feel eyes burning into her back, staffers whispering, lobbyists pulling out phones, allies giving her brief nods of approval. By the time she stepped into the marble hallway, the scene had transformed. Reporters swarmed like a hive, shouting questions, cameras glaring like a wall of lightning. "Congresswoman Crockett, do you have proof of more flights? Are you accusing Justice Thomas of criminal acts? Do you expect him to resign?" She didn't break stride. Her answer was short, razor-edged. "The people have a right to know who owns their judges." And with that, she pushed through the press and disappeared behind the closed wooden doors of her office. But the battle wasn't only public. Within minutes, the phone in her office began ringing. The first call came from a number she recognized but hadn't expected. A donor with deep pockets and deep ties to the very billionaires she had just exposed. "Jasmine, The voice was low, almost paternal. "You've made your point. Now it's time to let it go." Her silence stretched across the line, cold and unbending. The voice tried again. "There are consequences for this kind of crusade. You're smart enough to know that." She cut the call without a word. The next call was worse. A Republican strategist, notorious for backroom threats, his tone dripping with contempt. "You want to end your career in one term? Keep talking. Keep waving those papers. We'll bury you under so many ethics complaints you'll never breathe again." Crockett stood by the window, staring out at the Capitol dome glowing against the night sky. Her reply was calm, almost defiant. "You can bury me in paper, but you can't bury the truth." And she hung up. Her staff was nervous. One aide whispered, "They're going to come after you." Another handed her a memo already circulating online, a conservative blog calling her a liar, a fraud, a radical. The attacks had begun. But then, something shifted. Amid the hostility, her phone lit up with messages from people she hadn't expected. A retired judge sending a private note of support. A group of veterans recording a video saying, "We fought for justice, not for billionaires' privilege." Workers at a factory in Ohio holding up hand-painted signs. "Whose court? Our court." The backlash was fierce, but so was the groundswell. Crockett realized the fight was no longer confined to the marble walls of Congress. It was spreading. It was becoming a people's battle. That night, she traveled to a union hall in her district. The place was packed. Steelworkers, teachers, retirees squeezed into rows of folding chairs. The air smelled of coffee and old wood, heavy with anticipation. Crockett stood at the front, no teleprompter, no notes, just the folder clutched in her hand. "This isn't about left or right," she told them. "This is about survival. If billionaires can buy judges, then every worker in this room has already lost." The crowd murmured, then erupted in applause. Someone shouted, "Tell the truth!" Another, an older veteran with a cane, called out, "Don't back down, Jasmine, we've got your back." The hall thundered with chants, "Our court, our court, our court." It was more than a political hearing now. It was a movement, and Crockett knew the pressure wasn't just to silence her, it was to crush the wave she had set in motion. Behind the applause, the danger only grew. Leaked reports showed billionaire donors were huddling in private meetings, strategizing how to discredit her. Some were already funding ads, branding her a liar. Others whispered about using allies in the media to smear her reputation. But the louder their smear campaign became, the more ordinary Americans began asking the question that had hung in the chamber like a spark. Whose justice is this court serving? And the answer, once unthinkable, was now echoing through factories, churches, and living rooms across the country. The next morning, Washington woke to a storm. Every major newspaper ran the same headline in some form. Crockett calls out Thomas over billionaire gifts. On talk radio, callers shouted over each other, some furious, others triumphant. The clips of her words, "This is not friendship, this is bribery," had already racked up millions of views overnight. But Crockett was not interested in headlines. She wanted action. In her office, aides spread papers across the table, drafts of letters, memos, and one bold proposal, a resolution demanding a formal investigation into Clarence Thomas's financial disclosures. Crockett's eyes scanned the document. She tapped her pen against the words, "Committee to Investigate Corruption of the Supreme Court." "This is it," she said firmly. "We file today." Her chief of staff hesitated. "It will trigger open war. The backlash will double. They'll accuse you of dismantling the court itself." Crockett leaned forward. "Good. Let them. Better to face open war than silent surrender." By midday, the paperwork was filed. Cameras swarmed the Capitol steps as Crockett stood before the press. Flanked by colleagues, she raised the resolution high. "No justice should be above justice," she declared. "We demand an inquiry into Clarence Thomas's undisclosed gifts, flights, and luxury vacations. The American people deserve to know if their highest court has been sold to the highest bidder." The flash of cameras was blinding. Reporters shouted, "Do you expect bipartisan support?" "Will this end in impeachment?" Crockett answered with deliberate precision. I expect courage, and if courage is in short supply here, the people will remember it at the ballot box." The clip hit primetime news within the hour. Networks replayed her fiery declaration on a loop, pundits arguing endlessly. Some called her reckless, others called her fearless, but no one could deny that she had changed the conversation. Meanwhile, allies began to surface from unexpected corners. A centrist senator, usually cautious and quiet, sent out a statement. "We cannot ignore credible evidence of corruption, regardless of ideology." Even a conservative lawmaker, privately frustrated with Thomas, hinted at supporting a thorough review. The ripple effect grew stronger when social media exploded with a new trend. Our court. Veterans posted photos of themselves in uniform, captions reading, "We didn't serve for billionaires to own our judges." Teachers filmed TikToks chanting, "If we disclose every dollar, so should they." At a town hall that night, Crockett faced a crowd packed shoulder to shoulder. Blue-collar workers, retirees, young activists, they were all there buzzing with anticipation. She stood on stage, the resolution still in her hand. "You've paid in. You've earned it. It's your money, your rights, your court, and they think they can take it from you with private jets and luxury yachts," the crowd roared. A steelworker shouted, "We'll stand with you." A group of seniors held signs reading, "Judges for sale, trust democracy for sale." Crockett's voice sharpened. "This is not politics. This is survival. If we allow corruption at the highest court, then every worker, every veteran, every family is left defenseless, and I won't stand by while the scales of justice are tipped with gold." The applause shook the walls. Reporters in the back struggled to capture the deafening chants. "Our court! Our court! Our court!" Meanwhile, in hushed private rooms across D.C., powerful figures seethed. A billionaire's aide slammed his phone down after watching the town hall broadcast. "She's turning this into a movement. If we don't shut her down, she'll burn the whole house with us inside." Another voice replied darkly, "Then it's time to escalate." The battle lines were clearer than ever. Crockett had transformed evidence into action, and action into momentum. But with every step forward, the shadow of retaliation grew darker. The day of the hearing arrived like a gathering storm. Outside the Capitol, crowds had swelled. Veterans with flags, teachers with handmade signs, factory workers with their kids perched on their shoulders. The chant rolled like thunder. "Our court! Our court! Our court!" Inside, the atmosphere was suffocating. Every seat was filled, cameras bristled from the back, and journalists lined the walls like a firing squad. At the center of it all sat Jasmine Crockett, the thick folder of evidence on the desk before her. Her hand rested on it as though it were a weapon. When the gavel struck, the chamber snapped to attention. Crockett wasted no time. She opened the folder and drew out a single sheet. Her movements deliberate, slow, designed to make the entire room hold its breath. "This," she said, raising the page, "is not speculation. This is not rumor. This is a letter written by the billionaire himself, his words, not mine." A murmur rippled through the chamber. Some craned their necks, desperate to catch a glimpse of the document. Others shook their heads in denial. Crockett began to read, her voice steady, every syllable echoing. "We were honored to host Justice Clarence Thomas at our estate. As always, his comfort was our priority, and no expense was spared." The silence was electric. Reporters scribbled furiously. Crockett's eyes darted across the aisle, locking on the defenders of Thomas. She continued, "Our friendship has been rewarding, and it is always satisfying to know that men of influence appreciate our hospitality. These visits, whether by jet, by yacht, or in our lodges, will continue." The chamber exploded. Some lawmakers leapt to their feet in outrage, others in applause. Shouts filled the air. "Fabricated! Read it all! He's guilty!" The speaker's gavel hammered again and again, but it was useless. Crockett held the letter high above her head. Her voice cut through the chaos. "This is not friendship. This is bribery, confessed in his own hand. And Clarence Thomas sat on cases involving these very billionaires while accepting their gifts. That is not justice, it is corruption." Her words detonated like dynamite. The crowd outside roared as the broadcast reached the giant screens they had set up on the steps. The chants grew deafening. Resign! 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 Inside, allies of Thomas scrambled. One senator bellowed, "This is an attack on the judiciary itself!" Another hissed at Crockett, "You've gone too far. You'll destroy everything." But Crockett leaned into the microphone, her eyes blazing. "If exposing corruption destroys your illusion of the judiciary, then maybe it deserves to be destroyed." The chamber gasped. Reporters typed furiously, sending headlines into the world before the echoes faded. "Crockett calls for accountability, not illusion." Suddenly, the unexpected happened. A moderate Republican, long silent, stood and spoke with visible strain. "We cannot ignore this. Whether you like her or hate her, the evidence is on the table. We owe the people an answer." The chamber froze. For the first time, the shield around Clarence Thomas cracked. Allies turned on one another, whispering, calculating. The cameras caught every flicker of doubt. Crockett seized the moment. "No justice is above justice, no robe hides corruption, and today this chamber must decide. Will we protect the people's trust, or will we sell it to the highest bidder?" The roar that followed was unstoppable. The chants from outside fused with the chaos inside, a wave so loud it seemed to shake the very walls. Clarence Thomas's name, once untouchable, was now dragged into the public square, battered by evidence and outrage. Calls for his resignation flooded the airwaves. Editorials drafted themselves in real time, and Crockett, standing amid the storm she had unleashed, closed her folder with finality. Her words hung like a hammer blow. "This is not the end. This is the beginning of accountability." The fallout was immediate. Within hours, major networks cut into regular programming. Crowds swelled in cities nationwide. Hashtags trended. Yusur Thomas resign. Our court. End corruption. The battle was far from over, but the momentum was irreversible. The final blow had landed, and its aftershocks would reshape the nation.